All right, David Delgado here, Freedom Choice Lending. I've got some great information, so stay tuned. We're going to go over the market where things are kind of showing some signs, believe it or not. So, if you're thinking about buying a home, you may want to pay attention to this because I think this is some good insight on where the market's going. Or if you're a real estate agent, you may want to share this with your clients, your home buyers, right? Because knowing where the market's really going is essential, really critical, to keep your finger on the pulse, right? To really know where things are going is really important if I'm buying a home. And I get that question all the time, like, hey, Dave, when is the right time to buy? Well, if you're buying it for a short term period, then yeah, trying to time yourself is pretty good, but it's pretty hard to time the market because it is so volatile, unpredictable. We can get lucky at times, or if we're planning to buy it for a long period, like a long period of time, like we're going to buy it and maybe pass it on and to generations and hold it for the next 10, 15, even 30 years and keep it in the family, then this is something that you probably want to start planning as soon as possible. Get into that home so that way you can start appreciating the value, right? The equity in the home. But year over year right now, I've got some interesting facts right now that's being reported by Business Insider that foreclosures are starting to fill up year over year. So that means year over year, foreclosures are actually on the rise, right? And this is a red flag. So even though there's broader housing market remains relatively stable, but the individual borrowers with weaker cushionings may be vulnerable, right? So meaning anyone that bought their home in the last 3-5 years that maxed it out, their DTI's maxed out. That's a debt to income ratio. And FHA, the max DTI is 50%. They're feeling the pressure today, right? They're definitely feeling pressure because that's why we've seen these foreclosures on the rise. So you may want to check that out. If you're buying a home in an area or thinking about putting your house on the home, how would that foreclosure impact your market? So if I was putting my house on the market, first thing I want to know is what are the foreclosures looking like in my local area? Because one foreclosure can actually impact the sale of somebody's home by about 10%. Okay. And that's just my perspective. Keep in mind, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I don't have any concrete evidence of this. I just have the evidence of my experience. But you want to do your own research and you want to work with somebody that can really trust, like a real estate agent that you can highly trust, that's going to give you the proper information. So that way they're not influencing any type of decision that you may have. They're just going to provide you with the right information so you can make the right decisions. The second question I get is like, Dave, when's a good time to buy? And right now we're running into October. So on this, weekly mortgage update here, October 9th, 2025, a lot of times we're already mid-October, right? Next week, we're mid-October. And by that time, if somebody's out there looking at houses today, they've been looking at them for at least a few months. So this is a really good time to buy, actually, because we see that home prices, soften a little bit because the seasons, we're getting off peak seasons. So there's less buyers in the market. And that means there's less competition. And that means you can really get a bargain deal. So November, December's are great times to buy if you're looking for that special deal. But that means you got to take time to really put this on like high priority, right? This is something that you're going to be doing because once you get into like May, those are all buyers. These are clients and, they've been looking since the beginning of the year because they set that New Year's resolution. They're like, May is going to be the time I buy. A lot of times the reasons why is because school's out, things like that. They're going to have more time. But in reality, there's more competition and we see more sales, but we also see home prices go up $20,000, $30,000 because people are bidding on those homes a lot more. Even in today's market, we still see that quite often. And it really depends on the type of agent that you're working with too, because I work with a variety of agents and I see city agents out there that, we hold these training events to train and equip these real estate agents out there. And I can see the money that they're saving their clients, right? $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 versus, maybe somebody that's not always attending the trainings or not going to trainings, not learning really what's going on in the market. So there's a big difference between real estate agents as well as loan officers, right? That's like saying all doctors are the same. Not all doctors are the same, and we got different levels of doctors, right? So the same thing with real estate agents, the ones that are constantly sharpening their skill, and the same thing loan officers constantly sharpening their skill, getting better because they want to serve their clients better, right? So they're going to have a better experience and get the house that they really want. So let's move forward to the next part I want to really talk about today. What homeowners and buyers, right, should keep in mind in today's market. So a lot of times if you're a homeowner now and you're thinking about, man, maybe now's a good time to refinance, right? Even though you got that mortgage, well, will it make sense for you to refinance into a lower rate so that way you can reap the benefits, right? Meaning might allow you to have a little bit more cash flow in the house, or maybe pay off that extra credit card that you have. Or man, if you have no credit cards, that's amazing. You're doing outstanding. And what if that extra $300-$400 you can just put into a savings account, right? So these are all things that you can do to save money. And they're like, well, Dave, I already have a savings account. Well, just imagine if you save more money, what you're going to have in the next 3-5 years, you're just going to have that much more money. A lot of times I have also talked to the clients. It's like, hey, this extra $300-$400, you have a 401k? Yes. Why don't you increase that by $300-$400 because maybe their employers are matching them or giving them some sort of incentive. And that means they're going to not just save $300-$400 more, but they're also going to save a lot more because their employers are doing some sort of employee match. So take a look at that, explore all the different options, and really come up with the really good reasons on why to refinance. And we're seeing right now, anyone that has a 6.3 or higher, if they have any type of debt, paying off a car loan or something like that, saving tons of money off interest. So it just may make sense for you. Another thing I see a lot of times is right now might be a good option. Maybe going from a 30-year mortgage into a 15, or we can customize these mortgage for you. So it may not even be a 30-year mortgage. What if we customize this thing to pay this mortgage off in 22 years? We can customize that for you. And we're seeing a lot of people take advantage of that type of loan program as well. So it's just not about the rate was what really I'm talking about, right? You got to explore all these different options, including the total cost of refinancing, and also ask yourself, is there all like some sort of a net benefit after all this stuff is taken into consideration? Beware of all the foreclosures that are being reported because that can really cause an impact on somebody's home. So let's say you're going to want to wait until maybe next year to refinance, but based on the information we're picking up right now, that foreclosures are increasing, and one foreclosure in the market can really play a huge role as far as property values in that market by reducing it. I've seen it reduced by about 10%, sometimes even more than that. You just never know, but you want to be aware of what's really going on. So I have a lot of clients that say, I'm going to refinance next year and it's totally fine. We don't put any pressure on anyone, but you got to be aware of these things. You got to be aware of what's really going on in the market, because you may want to think about refinancing and just wait for a little bit, but how much did it really cost you in waiting? The $300 for the next 12 months, just add that up, right? $300 this month, $300 next month, $300 following month. We're talking thousands of dollars, but then next year it's not promised, because we would like to assume that foreclosures are never going to happen, but it's just part of the facts, right? These are things that are uncontrollable. I can't control them. Your real estate agent can't control them. It's all based on the economy and what's really going on in the economy. And if you really think about it, if I've been doing this for 2 decades and I've seen the ups and downs in real estate, and the media would love to talk about like, hey, this is coming down or this is going up, or, right now everything's crashing and burning. And to be honest with you, sometimes it's not always accurate. So you're going to want to do your research to make sure what is really happening in your local market, right? Because that's really important, because I've seen local markets really outperform the national averages, whereas a national average or a different state might be in a decline, and the media might pick that up and really talk about it like that's the national average. But in fact, there's just something that's going on in that local region area. So always do your research when it comes to that. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. We can team you up with the right real estate agent, a top-notch realtor that's part of our network. We have phenomenal real estate agents that we highly trust and we can highly recommend right over to you. For home buyers, it's always best to lock in as soon as possible. I get a lot of times where, the loan officer is actually floating the rate on a purchase market like this, and it's so volatile, and that creates a lot of uncertainty for the client. I always tell the clients, lock in as soon as possible. So if you're out there shopping for a home, the moment you go under contract, contact that loan officer and says, hey, I want you to lock in that rate. Do not float this thing. You're basically gambling with my money, right? Think about that. What it means by floating the rate is that they're just going to wait until it could improve, but the opposite can happen. It could have the opposite effect. It's the rates may not improve. Your closing costs may not improve, right? So the cost to actually get that rate might change, which could cause an increase in your closing costs. So to avoid any surprises on a purchase transaction, I suggest that you lock a lot sooner than later. You'll just have a lot more peace of mind going through that transaction. That way, there's no surprises in the process. Comparison is essential, right? I always like to encourage, home buyers, shop around, ask around. Don't always go with the first person. Or maybe you found somebody that you can highly trust and they refer it over to you, right? But make sure that, they get full disclosure on the fees. Like with us, we shop the loan around with the top 200 wholesale lenders, the biggest, the largest, lenders in the country. We shop them all the way down to the smaller companies out there, seeing who's got the best rates, who's got the best closing costs. And we compare, right? We compare different banks, retail companies. We compare brokers. That's what we are. We shop that loan around. And another thing you may want to consider is ARMs. We're getting a lot of inquiries about ARMs. But the only downside to that, it puts, the home buyer at risk. If you're planning on keeping this home for more than 10 years, is it really worth it to you that we don't have any idea what the future of the market is going to come, right? So if you plan on keeping this home for the next 10, 15, 20 years, then you may want to stay from these ARMs, because the ARMs is what got this country in a big old trouble to begin with in 2009, 2010. There's just so many ARMs that were floating around, and they had a reset because no one wasn't thinking about that big reset of that ARM. And it caused people to get behind because those rates jumped and values came down, and now they can't refinance. And it just really caused a lot of havoc in this country. So if you really want to ARM, because maybe it's a short-term, you're just like, hey, I want to save this extra 0.5 percentage point. You got to ask yourself, is that really worth the extra 0.5%? Just knowing that we can't control the future in real estate, right? And then also make sure that you're working with a company that, man, one of the things I like to do is look at the reviews, right? See what they're really doing out there. How are people saying about them? Take a look at that. If you ever want a free mortgage plan, just call us at the office. Phone number is 866-587-6927. And our mortgage plan, we're going to go over prices. We're going to go over monthly payments, go over all the various closing costs. It's really great way to educate yourself, to prepare yourself, because I believe when we educate ourselves, it brings knowledge, right? We learn, and knowledge drives confidence. And that means you as a home buyer, you're going to be able to make better decisions moving forward for you, whether you're buying this home for you and your family or your loved ones. Trust me, when we spend 20, 30, 45 minutes, sometimes even an hour breaking down the process of buying a home, breaking down the different loan options, people walk away feeling so much more confident, and they're going to just go out there, buy a home much sooner because they have the confidence to do that. If you like a free consultation like that, just reach out to us at the office. Also, visit us at our website is www.freedomchoicelending.com. If you have any questions, just reach out. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.